in the next couple of years, vibe coding will be easier. Even more people without technical background can create their own product, right? Companies like Salesforce or HubSpot, or they provide the platform for it.
And it's a bit like OpenAI, ChatGPT, they already have a GPT store. But maybe the future, it's people sharing their own AI agents.
Yeah.
If in 5 years, software buyers or buyers of any product or service, if all they do is go to ChatGPT, they go nowhere else, right? That would obviously be very detrimental to our business.
Like the marketing is about how to turn your scalable machine into the authentic machine, right? You cannot make a mistake these days, like because the mistake costs you an account. Right now, we literally cannot afford and cannot hire junior talent anymore just because of the high quality delivery of what we need to do for clients.
Yeah, no, I think you're describing an interesting shift, Michael.
My CMO mentioned that whenever she posts something like a one feature product on the AI or something, or the quick like AI fix, it gets traffic and people are kind of going. So whatever you do that has AI part in it, it's got traffic. But whatever you do that is a core problem, it's less popular these days.
And I do think every business person now, whether you're a solopreneur or you're working for a Fortune 500, I think it's impossible to not be both curious, and I think there's also some fear around AI. AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI.
Godard Abel is the co-founder and CEO at G2, the world's largest software marketplace. Today, the platform lists more than 200,000 products and services, hosts over 2.7 million verified peer reviews, and attracts over 90 million software buyers every year. Investors have backed that traction with over $257 million in funding and a $1.1 billion unicorn valuation. Before G2, Godard built and cashed out of two category-defining CPQ companies like Big Machines, sold to Oracle for roughly $400 million in 2013, and Steelbrick, acquired by Salesforce for over $360 million in 2016. Those back-to-back exits cemented his reputation for spotting market gaps early, scaling fast, and delivering enterprise-grade outcomes. So I would like to open up with the following. Do you agree that for the past 20 years, we've been living in time of kind of software builders where it has been extremely difficult to build a software, but they're relatively easy to market one. And now with kind of AI, we've switched the seats in a way that now building a software is easier, but then marketing and selling it is like 10x more difficult. What do you think about this?
No, I think it's true. And I've been building enterprise software companies for 25 years. And I do remember 25 years ago, it was super hard, where we had to even buy Sun servers, Oracle database licenses, application servers. You had to really build the whole stack. And, write all your code in Java. And it was obviously a very arduous process. And now with AI, cloud, it's easier than ever to vibe code, spin up any app. And we see that on G2. G2 has become the largest SaaS software marketplace. There's over 200,000 listings today.
Okay.
Of all types of software, about 2,000 categories. So now there's purpose-built software for every vertical, every department. And so I do think that makes it hard now for entrepreneurs to break through that noise. There's new categories, let's say like AI note takers, for example. And there's a great one Granola I use, or Zoom has them. There's literally hundreds of options. And so I do think now the challenge more for an entrepreneur or developer, if you're building an app, is how do you break through the noise? And I think that's, kind of an interesting new challenge versus, building the code, building the infrastructure. All of that's gotten much easier.
Yeah. How many did you see the spike in new apps registered on a platform in the last couple of years, like then every year? Is there any dynamic in terms of how many new apps are kind of popping up on the platform comparing to the previous year now with kind of vibe coding and AI being, open to everyone?
Yeah, I would say it's been kind of exponential growth. In the last year, the number of listings on G2 has grown 23%.
Okay. Yeah,
And
with
so
new apps,
that's,
right?
that's probably about 40,000 new listings.
Mhm.
And we also have 50 new categories now around AI software.
Mhm.
And,
Wow.
obviously including the AI infrastructure, things like vector databases. Obviously, nobody before ChatGPT 3.5 probably cared about. And
Right.
obviously now some of our newer categories are things like agent builders, AI orchestration to orchestrate multiple agents. And again, those were high categories 2 years ago. Nobody would have even imagined. And so I think, we're just seeing tremendous growth in what we call our GQ taxonomy, both in terms of software categories as well as individual listings. And I think it's obviously wonderful if you're a software buyer, which probably every knowledge worker is, because now you
Right.
can also not just find a software app, you can probably find an AI assistant to help you do just about any job. And so it's a really exciting time for entrepreneurs. And I think there's just a proliferation now of apps and enterprise AI tools.
What happens with kind of apps that change their profile? Like they really want it to be kind of an AI application, but we all know them for this traditional sort of like SaaS or software. Like for example, you know, Apollo or let's say, Sales Loft per se, right? Like, so if they're like now, we are like AI software, right? So they had an AI and then kind of they wanted to push the AI forward. So do they still, do you think that's it's fair for them to be in the same kind of engagement, platform category, or they should be moved to the AI engagement platform or subcategory of the AI products in a way, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, and I think you're describing an interesting shift, Michael. And you mentioned the category of sales engagement, and actually our CMO at G2, Sydney Sloan, she used to be the CMO of SalesLot. And actually our VP of product marketing, Liz Daling, she used to be the VP of product marketing for Outreach. And those were
Okay.
obviously the two leaders in the world of
Yeah.
sales engagement.
Yeah.
And I actually remember watching that category grow over the last 10 years. And I knew both entrepreneurs, Kyle Border, who was building SalesLoft, Manny Medina
Mm.
is building Outreach. And I remember for years, they were also an arms race on G2, who's going to be number one, who's going to have the most
Right.
reviews in sales engagement. And I
Yeah.
think you're right. Now both are reinventing themselves. I think there's been a huge wave of now AI agents being built to drive outreach. And so we also have new categories now around AI sales assistants.
Right.
And I think both vendors, SalesLoft, Outreach, and probably
Yeah.
everyone else in that category has now also launched agents and virtual BDRs to drive your outreach for you. And so I do think that's an interesting shift now in software. We're all the big incumbents. And in the category of sales engagement, it was and is Outreach and SalesLoft. Now they're all innovating, introducing new AI first apps and agents on top of their platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you have new startups coming in, that are building AI first, AI only. And I think what'll be interesting to see, it'll probably be different in the category. There
Competition.
won't be one winner, right? But who wins? And I think obviously a lot of VCs are betting that in every category of software, these AI first, companies are actually going to emerge and win.
Mhm.
And actually, speaking of which, Manny Medina, the founder of Outreach, I just
Mhm.
saw him in London last week. He's now building a new AI first startup called Paid AI, and doing a whole new startup around AI monetization. And so, it's an interesting time where I think there's innovation by all the incumbents.
Mhm.
And of course, Salesforce, and I used to work at Salesforce, right? They're also reinventing now. Mark Benioff has an amazing vision around Agentforce and, Salesforce customers building all their agents on Agentforce. And so also all the big incumbents, they're going all in on AI. And so it's just this massive arms race of, startups coming in, trying to redefine, and all the incumbents also, building on their platforms, building on their data and adding the AI layer. And, but yeah, obviously it's a great time to be a customer, because I think whether you're using an incumbent or you use a startup, all this AI automation is being built
Right.
for you.
So, just so I understand it, so instead of kind of moving from a category to a category, let's say I'm still in the sales and engagement category, but what I do, I build a product on top of my platform, like a multi-product type of company, right? And I lease them under the new category. So now I'm kind of competing in both categories in the same time. My core platform is a sales intelligence platform by this AI assistant that I developed as the part of the multi-product. I'm just putting in listing into the different category. Is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we're seeing a lot of that in G2. I think that's what the incumbents are doing, right? If you have a strong sales engagement or a strong CRM platform, you're still going to sell that, right? And you have
Right.
thousands of customers on it. And then you're layering a new product, an AI
Mhm.
agent product on top of it. and then making both available to your customers. And I think that's also the reality, most of the customers, I think neither, and probably both models will coexist, right? Most companies still have human sellers, BDRs, SDRs. At the same time, for certain use cases, and we're doing that at G2, maybe for your simpler inbound queries that, would have been given to your most junior BDR in the past. Now the agent can handle the simple inbound BDR, SVR cases, and probably can handle them better, right? Because they're available 24/7, answer within seconds. And then you can, on data, obviously also score your leads, route them differently. Because if you see, wow, it's a best fit ICP enterprise lead, then maybe, you hand it off to a more savvy human seller right away.
Right.
So, so I think right now the two are coexisting for the customer. And I also think most vendors are doing both. Of course, if you're an AI first startup, you started in the last couple of years, then you're only going to be in the agents.
Right.
And, so I think right now we're seeing tremendous innovation, both by the incumbents and new startups coming in.
What I'm trying to understand is like, does it make sense to kind of reposition the entire thing and just move to the new category? Or it's like too risky and you always can do through kind of a multi-product or like building up additional layer, right? I was just thinking about the example of the Jaguar, the automobile company, right? Where they kind of introduce only like electric vehicle and change everything and kind of the model. And they lost like 95% of their customer base or something. So they're like kind of selling like 10 cars in the last year. So they dropped like 98% of their sales, right? Because they essentially repositioned the entire thing instead of introducing a multi-line product, right? Like, okay, we have those. So have you seen kind of successful examples from the folks, in the industry that sort of like repositioned and then moved only to AI, and then that actually helped them to move faster, more agile, rather than kind of creating this multi-brand thing, which again is kind of difficult, I think, right? Both
And
are
honestly, I think it depends on the scale of your existing business.
different.
Because on the extreme, if you take Salesforce,
Yeah, it's impossible.
a company I know very well, but if you have a $40 billion
Right.
existing business,
Yeah.
and you have 200,000 customers, that are on your existing CRM platform, I think obviously, well, the customers also don't want you to, turn that off and go AI only, because most customers aren't ready to go AI only either. So I think the reality is, if you're a big incumbent, you have a big customer base, big revenue base, then I think you really have to do both. And again, this example of Salesforce, we go all in on Agentforce. And then I think it's also interesting, they've introduced new flexible pricing, where you're still paying for the traditional CRM apps, Sales Cloud, Marketing Cloud per seat. But then now you can get credits for agent usage. And then I think what Salesforce and other big incumbents, I think, same thing with ServiceNow, where obviously ServiceNow traditionally the leader in ITSM platform. But now there's also, they're also building the AI platform to automate all these workflows and for ITSM. And I think they're also giving flexibility now where you can build agents on top of ServiceNow platform that can handle your ITSM use cases. And I think that's both the opportunity and challenge for the incumbents, right? They already have the thousands of customers.
Right.
And they can now add agents on top of it, but they have to support both. And I think there are some smaller startups, like one where I'm an angel investor. It's called Vivin. And I happen to know the founder, Matt Darrow. He was our sales engineer at Big Machines like 15 years ago. And he started out probably 5 years ago, let's say 2020, building, originally it was like a pre-sales automation platform, obviously built more as a traditional SaaS app. And now with AI, he's all in on Vivin, on agents, and actually more expert sales assistant agents. So kind of the next generation of the sales engineer, if you will. And so, but they were still small. So they've pivoted all into, now just selling the AI first Vivin solution. And I think it's working for them. So I think if you're small, you could probably still make the full pivot, but if you have a lot of customers, then you have to keep serving your customers and on the traditional SaaS platform while you also build the AI agents that your customers want.
Fair, yeah. I think like when you are in like upstream enterprise, kind of mature market, right? Like, it's very difficult to move from one technology to another. So if like, I always say I'm a very heavy user of HubSpot. So in case you provide me an AI CRM that is free, I'm not going to probably take it, right? Because like, it's going to take me so much time to move the entire everything to a new systems. But if HubSpot introduced something, an AI addition to what they have, a new product, I would love to use that, right? So I think to your point that most of the kind of businesses that are not heavy relying on the core technology, they can probably switch easier, like small businesses, right? But when you go to a bigger company, then it's the software providers, they expect to provide an AI addition to their core technology, right? But we are not kind of moving from the core product, right? So
And HubSpot is another great example. I know their CEO Yamini, they just launched their Breeze AI, and you may have tried it, right? But where you can use
yeah,
ChatGPT now natively within your HubSpot using all your data and all your apps. And I think that's a great example of an incumbent innovating. And it sounds like that's also good for you as a customer. You can keep using
that's
your
right.
HubSpot CRM, and you already have all your customer data there, and but now you can layer on their AI, and so I think there's a lot of that also happening.
Folks, if you're enjoying the interview so far, I would appreciate if you spend a second, like, comment, or subscribe to Belkins podcast on the platform where you're watching this. I'm trying to get my show listed in the best podcast, and a couple of seconds of your time would really help me a lot to do that. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the interview. You know what recently I discovered with HubSpot that I never known before? My co-founder, he's doing a lot of like vibe coding, and he kind of say, okay, I wanted to enhance our the template writing game. So I built I vibe code my own kind of template writing AI kind of product. And what HubSpot allows is to get the app market listing through API very quickly, so without a lot of hustle. So he was able to just get that product integrated in our HubSpot to talk to entire system in a way easily. So they kind of allow this, easy access to their kind of marketplace where you can, just quickly list your API and get your product integrated in a suite that you already have on a HubSpot without again going through a 10 hells of again, I don't know whether the other products are doing that, but that was like really cool. I was like, okay, that's smart. So now you can build your own product, add it to the suite, and just use it. So if I have a problem, let's say, how do I let's say ping my sales teams when it's time to follow up on the deal, right? Like I want to have my own notification system. I found there's no good product. I vibe code the product, I created an API, I integrate that API into my HubSpot, and now I have the problem solved. Spend a couple of days, some GPU, whatever. It's cool, right? It's like
Yeah,
the
it's super
future.
cool. So not only it sounds like you could vibe code, solve the problem for yourself, but then HubSpot's really made it easy to publish the AI, publish that tool to the HubSpot
Yeah.
marketplace, and then the other customers can use it as well.
I don't know whether you can actually publish this for the public access. Probably you can just do it for yourself. Probably, yeah. I don't know. I probably like if it's possible, then we're gonna see thousands of apps of HubSpot, and you don't know which app are used. But I think it's more like you can do it for yourself type of thing, right? So, but still,
So
I think
kind of
like when
package your own innovation.
exactly, that's right, that's right, yeah. Because like I think to your point, in the next couple of years vibe coding will be easier even more, right? So now people without technical background can create their own product, right? And you saw lots of product being listed on G2 right now. But imagine in a couple of years when it's going to be even more easier, right? And you can solve your own problem. And the goal is just to have your core technology being easily integrated with whatever you wanted to solve. So it's kind of you build your own product per se, and you just kind of people like companies like Salesforce or HubSpot or they provide the platform for it, right? So
Yeah, no, you can definitely, and a lot of people might say you can package as agents, right? Build your own agents. And it's a bit like OpenAI, ChatGPT, they already have a GPT store, where
yeah,
you can publish and share your GPTs. And I do imagine, and you mentioned HubSpot, they have a strong partner app marketplace. Also Salesforce, they've always had the App Exchange. But maybe the future, it's people sharing their own AI agents,
yeah,
that they built for their own CRM use cases. And why not share them? And it'll probably be massive long tail. And that's probably true in their app marketplace. A lot of those apps may not get used very much, but even if it can just help another customer or two, why not, right? And then some of those derivative works may even end up being huge hits where all of a sudden,
that's
it's
right.
not even, you're not even consider yourself a software developer, but you build some cool add-on to your HubSpot or your Salesforce, you publish it, and all of a sudden, thousands of the customers can use it too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting. Um, how much interest is in, in terms of, leads, traffic, eyes in the AI category comparing to the other categories in on the platform? The reason I'm asking you this is, we obviously are all trying to get attention and traffic and generate leads, right? But my CMO mentioned that whenever she posts something like a one feature product on the AI or something, or the quick like AI fix, it gets traffic and people are kind of going. So whatever you do that has AI part in it, it's got traffic. But whatever you do that is a core problem, it's less popular these days because it's not maybe as sexy or whatever. So when you kind of look at the more kind of traditional categories and the ones that are now growing with AI, what's the ratio in terms of the interest right now? Is it like 80-20 or 50-50, or just it's still the AI is still not that popular as the traditional one? Have you
And
looked
I
at
think
it?
all the growth right now is in the AI categories.
Mm,
We're probably seeing that on G2 where I think traffic to the AI categories is up over 100% year over year. And obviously also working off a smaller base, but I do think that's where all the growth is. Whereas maybe legacy SaaS apps are kind of, I would say, sideways or even slightly declining.
mhm.
Yeah, because at this point, this is known. We were talking about like traditional SaaS
Right.
CRM apps, and people
Yeah.
tend to know there's HubSpot, there's Salesforce, there's Microsoft Dynamics. Right?
Mm,
I think those markets are pretty well known. And I do think every business person now, whether you're a solopreneur or you're working for a Fortune 500, I think it's impossible to not be both curious. And I think there's also some fear around AI. If I don't adopt AI, my company may get disrupted. I may get disrupted in my job. And I do like the saying, and I don't know who originally said it, but I think AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. And so I think it's also incumbent upon really every knowledge worker right now, and there's over a billion in the world, right? I think, and I'm trying to do it in my own job as CEO. I'm trying to reinvent myself.
right.
And obviously, like on my browser, I have tabs for Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. Obviously experimenting with all of them, and it's also part of my job. But I also, it's to make me much more productive. You've probably seen it as well, but even mundane tasks like sending my board a follow-up email, a summary of my meeting, AI crushes that. And, where I used to probably spend 30 minutes on it, now I can get it done in 3 minutes. And there's just so many of those use cases, whatever your job is, where you can drive a lot of productivity and automation. So we're certainly, one, I'm trying to do it myself to learn and get better at my job, and also encouraging all our employees at G2 to do it. And I think the whole world's doing that now.
Mhm.
And so there's tremendous interest in people wanting to learn about AI. And I think the other thing that people are trying to learn is like, hey, what really works? Because especially I think people outside the Valley are also skeptical, right? There's all this hype around AI and
Right.
it's magical, but then like, hey, what really works, right? What works for
Yeah.
my company? What works for my industry?
Mhm.
Which AI use cases should I do first? So that's where I think there's just a ton of curiosity and people looking. And it sounds like that's also what your marketers found, right? If you tie into that AI wave and help educate people on AI and how to use it, then there's a lot of interest. And on the flip side, yeah, if it's not AI, then right now people probably aren't that interested because it's
Right.
it's not new.
Yeah. Would you recommend folks with kind of established brands and established software to start R&D and branch out like an AI product and start kind of competing in that new category, kind of going back to the roots and sort of like establish themselves in those new categories? Would you think it's a smart move?
Generally, yes. Of course, it has to make sense for your customers. Yeah, because also doing AI just for the marketing, obviously that doesn't make sense, right? But I also think now with AI tools, it's hard to imagine an application or an industry where AI wouldn't help,
Mhm.
but I think always in entrepreneurship, the key is, figure out what do your customers want, right? How can you help your customers more? And usually there's a way, kind of like what you mentioned earlier, I think even little hacks like, oh, make it easy to publish my app to the HubSpot app store.
Mhm.
I think even if it's, but I think there's always ways to take out administrative effort, even maybe it's on the maintenance side of your app, versus on the front end. But we sort of see that at G2 and the same thing you mentioned with the HubSpot listing. We're working on this right now. Like, why don't we automatically create your G2 listing for you? Because AI, we can look at your product description on your website, we can pull information, and then we just have a draft on the marketplace for you. And what used to maybe take you a couple hours, you have to set up your G2 listing with your demos, with your screenshots, with your product descriptions, all of that AI can just draft for you.
Yeah.
And
Quickly, yeah.
so rather than taking 2 hours, now it can take you 2 minutes.
Mhm.
And, that's just kind of, and I know in our own product, in our own G2 marketplace platform, I think there's literally like hundreds of things we can do to make our customers' lives easier, to add in AI assistance to take away some of the tedious work, that nobody likes doing
Yeah.
anyway.
Do you remove a longer hyphen when you are editing with ChatGPT and other AI, replacing it with like the other thing? Like the symbol, like longer hyphen symbol that shows that this was written by AI or edited by AI. You know this thing or no?
I'm not sure I know exactly what you mean.
So when you edit something with like ChatGPT or something, they always put like long hyphens on on the editing. That shows that you never do that. Like most people don't ever use kind of the
Mm,
double hyphen. So when you see something with a double hyphen, you're like, oh, it's probably gonna be edited with AI.
mm.
So I was wondering if you noticed that or not.
I haven't personally noticed it, and I'd have to actually ask our product managers if because we do allow also for reviews, you can use AI writing assistance because it helps you write better, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
how we're dealing with double hyphens
Yeah.
and generally I'd say it's better to be authentic and transparent, right? And I think using AI assistance is okay,
Yeah.
you know, but I'm not sure if we're addressing
It's like
that or
when you
not.
go to LinkedIn newsfeed, you see all these double hyphens
Mm,
everywhere. So like 2 years ago, no one was using them, and now you kind of have them everywhere. Just
mm,
check it out, you notice it.
okay.
So you're like, look at this, like, oh, it's all been written or rewritten or edited by
Uh,
AI, which is fine.
it's a
But
telltale sign.
right, exactly. So I was just wondering, like, maybe we just reached out to Sam Altman's team and just say, hey, can you just remove the double hyphen because it feels like, or why you specifically put it there, or like because now we start noticing. And this is actually an interesting trend. Do you think like we as people start kind of picking up these small signals like symbols or way that something is written to tell you whether it was written by human on AI, and that would actually kind of affect the positioning of a company? So we would feel like, oh, if it's an AI, it means that they outsource, they sort of like they try to automate, they try to be more efficient, they try to do more with less or something. And if it's going to be more kind of human creative, we're going to say like, okay, it's kind of handmade, it's craft, it's something like, what do you think about this?
Yeah, no, and I think it's actually getting harder to tell, I think, AI,
Mm,
because I think when ChatGPT first got popular a couple of years ago, it was less good, I think, because also AI is getting better at assuming personality.
right.
You can have it write in your personality in different tones. So honestly, I think it's getting harder to tell. But I do also think the same thing you said about software apps. I think AI is so much proliferating content that I do think the content also won't break through the noise, if it doesn't have some unique human creativity, some unique human touch. And I do think
Yeah.
we can somehow intrinsically tell, maybe it's also like what's entertaining. And I do think that's true in even B2B, right? Because people, they do want to be entertained, they want to be engaged.
Right.
And I think that still takes human creativity, whether we can tell automatically, with a double hyphen, but I do just think as humans, we just have a natural sense for what's interesting,
Yeah.
what's engaging, what's entertaining. And I do think that bar is much higher, right? And I think everyone's seeing it because the traditional strategy that also I think HubSpot made popular, with inbound, where you would just write to different business
Right.
topics. And they did a
Yeah.
great job of that for 2 decades and probably had the best marketing blog. But all of a sudden, just kind of putting out how-to content
Yeah.
probably isn't that effective because now if you have an how-to question, you can just go to ChatGPT. And
That's
I'm
right.
always amazed, right? Even like I love riding bikes on weekends. That's my hobby.
Mhm.
And now when I have any question on like how to fix my bike, and I was kind of amazed. I was just trying to replace the battery on my power meter, but I put in,
Mhm.
I have a specialized Epic but it just nailed it right away. It said, oh,
Yeah.
here's the exact spec of the battery you
Yeah.
needed. And by the way, here's the instructions of how to replace it.
Yeah.
And, but I was just amazed, because it's like, seems like kind of like a long tail bike. Not even a lot of people have it.
Right.
And, but I think almost any topic now, if you have a how-to question, right, like odds are ChatGPT will crush it. So I think,
100%.
so if you're going to write your own content, I think the bar is much higher now. And I do think adding human personality, human creativity, uniqueness,
Mhm.
that's what's going to engage us, right? Because I'm sure it's the same for you. If you can kind of tell it's just bland AI content, then You don't need to go to someone's website to read that. If you want basic information, you just ask ChatGPT yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I was, when I always was telling people that the best way to prepare for the AI is to start generating a lot of unique insights, a lot of kind of proprietary information, something authentic, something that only you can have. It could be any insights from conversations with customers, any data you generate, anything whatsoever that would bring something to the table that never been you cannot just access that in a how-to type of library, right? Then by packaging that, you're first going to create a authentic unique content, right? Like thought leadership, something that only you can have, and it will position you very high with like AI and other LLMs, because now you are more searchable than other, because you can provide the information that no one else have. So now you're unique, and also your customers see that, because they cannot just simply go and ChatGPT this, right? This is only you have that. So like the marketing is about how to turn your scalable machine into the authentic machine, right? And how I can now create more of us that is built on what we do, rather than it's built towards how we can scale that to more kind of traffic type of lead type of, so.
Yeah. I think you're right, kind of having your own personal take. And I think also related to that, I think now building a personal brand, so then people want to hear from you, some unique perspective and, some unique perspective on the world. And if you build a trusted brand, people are like, oh, I want to hear from Michael on this topic, you're a trusted voice on the topic, then I think people will still engage with your content, right? Because a lot of it goes about who wrote it. And you also see that with reviews on G2.
Yeah.
Probably what's even more important than the words that are written is like, who's the person, and do you view them as an expert on the domain, right? Do you trust them?
Yeah.
And I think that also is, I think, very important to break through the noise, right? Because I think, just generic content without a personality behind it, without a trusted brand, is probably not going to be engaging.
Yeah. We're probably going to go back to the times of corporate blogs that are very well done, like authentic sort of like content, something you really wanted to read, follow, kind of subscribe type of newsletter, something that, that it's not just some copywriters are pushing it
True.
out, but actually kind of people. And talking about brand, did you guys notice that kind of there is like a brand value right now in the LLM world? So like if you have a brand authority, especially with like Google, then you are ranked much higher, and generally you are more positioning towards like, okay, you're like an authorized or like a expert source. So whatever you do, you're positioned higher than the others. And if you're not, then it's very difficult to get ranked position. Did your marketing team at G2 reported on something like that?
Yeah, no, we have definitely been looking at, kind of what people are also not calling GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, which is analysis when ChatGPT or Gemini, when they give an answer, what is the LLM trained on? What's it basing its answer on? Obviously, sometimes they give you citations that makes it easier to tell. But there's also an interesting new startup called Profound. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they specialize in GEO. And I think that's what most brands, most marketers are not trying to figure out. If someone asks ChatGPT a prompt, a question related to your brand, how does it answer and why does it answer that way? And I think back to your original question, we certainly see at G2, and there's an analysis done by the Washington Post on Google AI. What are the most, and you could actually look it up online, like what are the most cited sources, or what tokens, people trained on the most. And we did see G2 was in the top 250 of all
Reviews.
websites.
Yeah.
And so for software, business software topics, we do have a lot of influence on the LLM answers. And I think partly it's related. And we also have good page rank in the traditional
Right.
SEO world and domain authority. So I do think it's related to how your site ranks in SEO. And I think a lot of that is also related to your brand and your domain authority and your
Yeah.
trust. And I do think the LLMs are, they're also, well, just like they did for the purpose of SEO and page ranking, they're kind of trying to figure out, hey, what's your domain? What are the topics
Yeah.
you're viewed as an expert on? And then you're more likely, your content is more likely to be weighted in their training. I think one of the interesting about LLMs, and we've all heard about Reddit,
Mhm.
And Reddit, they did a partnership with Google, strong partnership, part of which was Google also having access and licensed all the Reddit conversations to be able
Mhm.
to train their Gemini and their other
Okay.
AI models. And I think, we were also talking to Reddit, but I think a lot of what the LLMs want to train on is human conversations.
Yes.
And maybe it's back to the authentic voice, because they also, I think the last thing AI wants to train on is synthetic AI generated
That's right.
content, right? It wants to train on real human conversations. And so I think certainly sites like Reddit that have a lot of human dialogue are doing well. And I think also G2, it's user generated content. It's real authentic reviews from real users. And so I think that's the type of content that LLMs want to train on. And that's probably something else for marketers. I think the more you can make your content, and really LLMs in some ways, it's all back to the Socratic method.
Mhm.
Obviously, the Greek philosopher Socrates, he taught everyone by Q&A. And really, if you look at AI, that's what it is, right? Prompts
Right.
or questions, you get answers, but you have back and forth dialogue with Q&A.
That's right.
And so I think what the LLMs are craving is really human conversation,
Yeah.
ideally with real experts. And I think that's, then if you're a brand or a marketer, if you have a lot of good, authentic human content from experts and it's fresh content, then that's what the LLMs are also going to train on. And, I think one of the things we're actually doing at G2, we did just acquire a startup called Unsurvey. And what they enable, they basically have agents that will interview you. And we see as the future of software review. It won't be a static web survey or web form anymore. It'll just be a conversation like you and I are having. And then with AI, we can parse that conversation. But now we've launched a G2 AI interviewing agent. And that's what's going to be asking you about the review. They'll ask you, you mentioned you're a HubSpot user. They'll ask you, hey, Michael, how are you using HubSpot? What use cases are you automating? Are you using their new AI tools? What ROI are you getting? What challenges are you having? But it just has a good conversation and it's interactive. And traditionally,
Interesting.
for CRM reviews, we would have had a survey with 40 structured questions that honestly is not fun
Right.
for anyone to fill out.
Yeah.
Whereas now you can just have a conversation, an interesting conversation about how you're using the HubSpot platform. And then at the end, the AI just parses it and, says, hey, Michael, here's a draft review. You can edit it, approve it, publish it.
Mm.
And so, but I think all of that's also going to create more conversational content, which we
Yeah.
see it'll be better for other software buyers that will learn about HubSpot because they can learn from your conversation. And then also, frankly, it'll be much better content for the LLMs to train on. And so I think, and this is probably true for any website now, any content publisher, or even just as a marketer, how do you run your website? I think having more conversational
That's
human
right.
expert content,
Yes.
I think that's going to be the key to make your content stand out.
Yeah. But also like how other authority sources are referring to you, right? So let's say
True.
if you're listed on G2 and how G2 is talking about you, the other ones, like, so essentially you're building up your own kind of ecosystem of sources that are kind of referring to you that are also our authorized sources. And in this way, they kind of lift you up to, okay, you're also an authority source,
True.
right?
Yeah,
So,
that's a good way to do your GEO, your generative engine
right.
optimization. And you're right, even participating in conversations on Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
For example, and Reddit now actually has brand pages.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously conversations on G2,
Yeah.
conversations on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But I think the more you're in online communities where people are
Yeah.
talking about your products,
Yeah.
talking about your brand, and then authentically participating in that conversation and spurring that conversation,
Yeah.
I do think that's going to be the best way to make sure your brand stands out, and then through the voice of your customers, through customer conversations, through user-generated content, getting that message out there. And so I do think that's kind of new evolution. And there's a lot of similarities that was in the SEO era, but also a lot of differences.
That's right.
And I think the main difference is, you need more authentic human conversational content because the traditional, blogs, and we did this at G2, we created like a Learn blog 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And honestly, it no longer performs very well. Just publishing how-to content, just, it's not
Yeah.
interesting anymore in the age of AI.
Also what's interesting, the people behind it. So, the articles or content, the conversational content that is featured with the writers or people in the industry like me,
True.
and then it's tagged correctly that I wrote it or I posted it, and I have a previous experience and backtrack that I write about this, actually help to have a higher reputation. So those pieces of content that I wrote consistently by the writers or people in the industry that been around and they have a long kind of tail of the other publication that are in this space are ranked much higher than by that are written by someone that is outside this industry, or this is not their scope, or they never been kind of published. So I think it's also kind of we're gonna see the future of the guest post right now. So if I am a expert on, let's say, B2B lead generation, and if I write my take or something on G2 blog or something, right? So it means that sort of like we are connected in terms of the authority source, right? Because now you're like, okay, these guys that know what they're doing are writing there and there. So we're gonna, I think we're gonna see like more guest blogs. We're also gonna see people more caring about who they write, for whom they write, and what they write actually. So that because now there's like a history of everything that you wrote. So the more you, it's to your point of personal brand, but not just as we think about this personal brand for founders, right? Like, oh, I'm the founder, should be, but literally for every person in the organization, what you route, what you post, where you're at, where you're speaking, because that's kind of create that branding score for you. And then the more people in your organization that are involved in this, the overall, the brand and the reputation score will grow for the entire organization for you in this industry per se.
And I totally agree that like who's publishing the content, and then every one of your employees, building their personal domain expertise, their personal brand on certain topics. And obviously, it's got to be authentic, so it's got to be topics that almost everyone in tech, we all have topics, areas we're passionate about, where we're experts. And then, yes, also online, establishing, sharing our expertise and building that brand. And I think you're right. And also, I think there's data on LinkedIn where nobody really engages with brand content. And we see this at G2. On G2, we do have a lot of followers on our G2 corporate page. Mm-hmm. But honestly, if we post something from just G2 corporate, it probably gets 25% the engagement versus if I posted, our CMO Sydney posted, our CRO Eric, so those of us that have personal brands in the industry, if we share it, we get much more impact. And obviously, we also put our authentic personal voice on the industry, our personal context, then it gets, probably 10 times the engagement.
Right.
And because people don't want to hear from brands, right? I think we want to hear, especially in the age of AI, we want to hear from real humans. We want to hear from real experts. And so I think you're exactly right. And I think probably even for anyone's career now, I do think it's critical that, somehow you establish your own line brand. And I've also told like my sons, we have twin boys, they're at the University of Colorado, just finished their sophomore year. Mm-hmm. But I also told them early on, like, hey, the minimum, build your LinkedIn profile.
That's right.
Build your X profile and start sharing on topics, start building on your networks, because there's really it's never really too early, right? And it's a compounding effect.
100%.
And I've seen this now. I've been doing it in some way. I've been an entrepreneur 25 years. I've been at LinkedIn for 20 years. And, if you continuously build your network, continuously share your content, your areas of expertise, then over time, you develop a following, you develop some domain cred in your areas of expertise. And I do think it's essential now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not going to break through that noise in the age of AI.
We've even noticed that if we engage with the content writer to write on certain topic, and if it's a known writer who has been creating in this space for a long time, when we publish something of that person, then they're gonna go rank very high within like 2-4 weeks. If that person doesn't have the authority name in the space, the ranking of this article went down. So just a tip for listeners who can even kind of negotiate with the writer the byline. So if you give them the byline, you pay less for them because they are all wanted to get that byline that they wrote it, that they published it, because that's just helped them a lot to kind of establish authority. And the more of their pieces of content are ranked in very high position, the more business they can generate, right? Because now they're like authority source, like what I post as Joffrey or Samana is actually getting a lot of attraction, even in the ranking. So it's literally like Google and Geminis and LLMs, they also kind of track about it and think about this as well. So just a tip.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice.
Yeah. I asked ChatGPT, why G2 has a strong brand and what's it's based on. Do you want to hear what the ChatGPT says?
Sure.
So it says, the answer is that you guys are consistent you provide consistent value, and also you guys do unbiased feedback, and then you have a community around the brand. So it's a community, it's unbiased, and it's kind of verified by by buyers and the vendors and the sellers. So that kind of live conversation. So these three things actually build G2 in a great brand. And I think to just to kind of follow up to our conversation just now, probably that's applicable to all other companies who wants to build brands in this space, right? So do you agree with ChatGPT, or there was a secret sauce to all of that you guys establish a good brand?
No, that really resonated with me because I think it said, one, we're consistent, two, we have a community, and three,
It's unbiased,
it's unbiased, trusted, authentic content.
right?
And I will say, no, those are all, I mean, that's all intentional. And I will say, though, it took time, especially consistency, because we've been building a company for over a decade. And I do remember, and that's a challenge in building a community, especially with user-generated content. And G2 is also a marketplace for matching software buyers and sellers. And I'd say if you're an entrepreneur, it does take time, because honestly, for the first 5 years, we didn't have a very good business. So we had to be patient. And, so at the beginning, we didn't take shortcuts because we wanted to stay on authentic content. And obviously there's like some software analyst firms that will just kind of write paid content and which might accelerate your revenue curve. But I think we've also always believed authenticity is one of our core values. We have our peak values, but we always said, hey, let's make our content authentic. And even if a vendor is willing to pay you a lot, like, hey, we're not going to just move them, automatically to the top of the rankings. And so we had to be more patient in terms of then getting enough brand buyer traffic so we could actually start to monetize. And but it's obviously nice to see ChatGPT recognize that. And of course, we're no way done, right? It's very much day one at G2. And also we're very much reimagining now for AI, because we were probably, when we started, we kind of built maybe the Web 2.0 era. At the beginning, we called it Yelp for software. And now we're also realizing, wow, there's massive opportunity and threat, as AI comes around. Because also our challenge could be if in 5 years, software buyers or buyers of any product or service, if all they do is go to ChatGPT, they go nowhere else, and there's no attribution, right? That would obviously be very detrimental to our business. And so that's also something. But on the flip side, as we also were talking about, all those LMs, they do need data to train on. And I think Perplexity started a good trend, where they're doing more and more citation and being more transparent around the sources. And so I think anyone that's running an online community, online site that provides content like G2, there's, I think, both threat and opportunity now in AI. And, but I think I'm glad we have that good foundation that, we do have a good community. We have a reputation for trusted and unbiased content. And, but obviously we have to scale that now in the age of AI. And as we were talking about throughout this conversation, we have to make our content richer, deeper, better for the age of AI, and more authentic and more by human experts, because I think that's what's going to stand out, especially in this AI age.
My co-founder, who is a big fan of your work, asked to ask you the following: how do you guys gonna compete with kind of LLM search and kind of retaining the business at G2, where like, people can again go and search, as you mentioned, like for the software in there, instead of paying X subscription, $20,000-$30,000 to G2, instead they kind of pay nothing. Like, what's your generally talk track to kind of to kind of
say
battle that challenge?
No, and I think overall, I'd also say we don't want to compete, with AI search and LLMs, because honestly, I think anyone trying to compete with ChatGPT and Gemini, I don't think it's a winning strategy. And I think they also realize that, we're one, and we talked about these themes earlier, one, they need the most trusted content to train on. And so, and I think right now, and as I mentioned, we're kind of a top 250 data source that LLMs like Google train on. So one, we want to make sure we keep providing content that ChatGPT and the LLMs do train on. And I think over time, they will provide more and more citation. And that obviously still creates a lot of value for our marketing customers. If we can influence buyers through, and that's, I think, what I call GEO, generative engine optimization. If marketers realize their reviews on G2 are the number one training set for AI search for the LLMs. And obviously that actually increases the importance of a G2 review, because now it's also, you know, the #1 trainer for the LLM answers, for the ChatGPT answers. And secondly, I think what all the LLMs are also seeing, like ChatGPT, they're also going to call other agents. And, you know, G2, we've already put on app on the ChatGPT GPT store. And now I think with this whole MCP infrastructure, we're also adding an MCP layer to G2. And maybe the future, you know, I think a lot of people are saying the future is agent to agent.
Mhm.
And I think even the LLMs, you know, potentially they're going to be getting their training data through MCP instead of through web crawling. So we're also adding an MCP layer so that,
Mhm.
you know, as it goes more agent driven, other agents, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, they can learn from us. And then I think also people are envisioning a future, as are we, that agents are going to be called to do specific jobs.
Mhm.
And I think if we can have deeper data on software stacks, software pricing, then, you know, the OpenAI agent may call our agent. And, you know, exactly how this works, I don't think anyone's sure. But I think our vision now is to be the trusted source of data in the age of AI. And I think most people are envisioning agent-to-agent future where there's certain expert agents for, you know, to do certain jobs. And we're positioning G2 to be that agent. If you really need
Right.
deep expertise on software and ratings and grids, then, you know, other agents will call our agents. AI search will reference G2. And so, you know, I think, like I said, we're aiming to be complementary, the most trusted data source that then complements the LLMs, the trends to AI search, as well as providing agents, and then helping our marketers also create selling agents
Mhm.
that can answer all the buyer questions. And I think what's also interesting, you know, I think all of these AI LLMs like Perplexity, we're also having actually direct partnerships discussion with them
Mhm.
because they're also trying to create differentiated experiences. And it's
Yes.
actually something Perplexity has already done with TripAdvisor for hotel search. If you go to TripAdvisor and ask it like, hey, what are the best hotels in Boulder?
Mhm.
That's where I'm living now. If somebody visits me, you can just ask Perplexity, give me the best hotel rooms in Boulder for under $200 a night. And what's interesting, it'll give you their LLM-driven answer, but it also actually does direct attribution of TripAdvisor and will actually embed the TripAdvisor reviews. And so I think that's also something we're discussing with Perplexity, and ultimately we could do with all the LLMs where we have a unique joint experience, you know, where our content can be surfaced through the LLM, but with direct attribution and with richer information than you get for a generic LLM answer. And so I think this is something the whole industry
That's
is probably
great.
going to figure out, you know, where I think the core LLMs are also going to be referencing expert sites, expert agents to actually provide better, more engaging answers to people prompting on their AI. And I think that's ultimately the arms race. You know, it's interesting, and it is a big arms race, right? ChatGPT is trying to, and I think right now they're leading, where they have like 800 million users
Yeah.
with growing engagement. But obviously Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, they're all trying to win. And I think ultimately they're going to compete on providing the best
That's right.
experience to their users. And I think they're also all recognizing, wow, they likely need some third-party partners in specific domains that have agents and data better trained for particular use cases. Yeah, because well, there's millions of use cases. And so that's kind of what I see as a future. And
That's
that's what
I love
future
it.
we see G2 fitting into. You know, if we can have the ultimate software expert agents, then core LLMs, other agents will call our agents in that particular domain. And so
Mhm.
ultimately, I think it'll be a complementary world. And we're aiming to, like I said, be the AI expert agent
Yeah.
and the AI expert data source that can be accessed through MCPs. So that as the world moves to AI first, you know, we're still the most relevant source of insight for software.
Yeah. So if we are living in the world where there's a buying AI buying agent, then I would probably wanted to buy that agent from someone like G2 who knows how to kind of buy the software instead of trying to train my own agent or using a third party agent, right? So I'd probably go to someone's like that knows everything about how to buy a software and get an agent, buying agent who will help me to this, right? So so you launched the agent, and this is something that I also wanted to ask you. So who would you use an agent like that, and what could be the buying process, and what is the timeline for this if you think when this kind of actually becomes popular? What do you predict?
Yeah. And we do have a buying agent available now on g2.com. And we also launched it we've launched in parallel G2.ai. You can actually go to that domain, if you want an AI first shopping experience for software. And I think, and on G2, both are available now. And I think the reality is the majority of users are still using more the traditional web search and
Right.
the traditional G2 interface, but we do see rapidly growing use of the G2 AI interface, and it's growing much faster. And I think at what point that tips, I'm personally not sure. It's like with the whole internet. I think if you look at it, Google SEO search is still overall much more popular, and obviously now it's also being blended, with the AI summary in search. But I think it's an interesting kind of question. At what point does it tip? At what point do most buyers at G2 engage with the agent first and the conversation versus a traditional web interface? And if I were to guess, I'd probably say, like I said, the AI conversational shopping method on G2 is growing much more popular. But I think the web interface still probably has 90% share. But if I were to guess, I don't know, in 2 or 3 years, it probably flips, and probably in 5 or 10, it's truly AI first, right? Where everyone's just starting with an AI conversation, and it might still be the human doing the prompting. And then when it goes to an agent is calling our G2 agent and there's no more human in the loop, that I don't know, and it's probably a long ways off.
Yeah. So what do you think would be the first use cases? Like there's like hundreds of note takers, and I'm just wanted to say, okay, it's not a very big deal for me. It's a $50 subscription per month. I just set it up as like, okay, here's what I'm looking for. You know me, just go and get me the note taker. So I'm gonna start with this, with the software that is kind of there's so many options out there. I just don't have time to go and talk to them, and it's gonna be like a low ticket size for me as well. So I guess this could be the first use case, or
Yeah. And you could try that on G2 AI right now, but you just ask it, hey, what's the best AI note taker? And then we'll obviously ask you to sign up, because if we have more context, like the size of your company, your job function, your role, then we can, our AI can give you better recommendation, the more context it has on you. And that's probably true with all AI. And I think we'd probably ask you to sign up with your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And then, then we know a lot about your professional context, and we can make better and better recommendations. But yes, and I think traditionally it would have been on G2. Well, the traditional process pre-AI, you would have gone to Google, typed in best note-taking
That's right.
software,
And then just
and
go
then
for
we
the
would have
huge
taken you,
article.
right? We would
Yeah.
have taken you to a category page on G2,
Right. Oh, right.
where it listed by ranking the top 10,
Yeah.
and you would have read about it. We had filters, but I think obviously it's much easier with an AI query where you just say, hey, what's the best AI note taker for me? And if you've already signed up with LinkedIn and we know enough about you, then we can very quickly make, very good bespoke recommendation. And obviously also give you the pricing. Hey, yeah, it's only $50 a month. Does this one sound good to you? You can obviously ask it some more questions. Hey, tell me more. What are users like me saying? And what's, granola versus Zoom native note taker? What are the pros and cons?
I have an idea. Have you thought of it? Because when you talk about like buying, for me, it's like, oh, should I just give my credit card? They will buy, they will charge it. I don't know. What if it's like a procurement or evaluation agent? So it's like for example, like I set up my stack, like all the tool that I'm using, and it always searches and sort of like looks at what's option, and it always kind of send me like different options of what's available, what is coming up right now in the market, what is a good alternative, what is trending right now, as well as sort of like helping me to evaluate what is next to help me to set up the best sort of like, so it's like, oh, I have these 3 tools that I'm paying X, but here's this new trending tool that is combining the features from all 3 of there and at the same cost. You should check it out. So it's always kind of going and searching and evaluating and procuring and kind of, but not making the purchase, but essentially recommending me, where is that? I would love to use something like that.
And one thing you can try on G2.ai is we have a new canvas, which is, and it's probably a lot like the OpenAI canvas you've seen, where now when you prompt and you're, let's say, creating a document, it pulls up a separate canvas where, which is kind of updating. And you could do that, especially because we also see that use case in buying software. It tends to be collaborative. It tends to be a buying committee. It's not just one person. And now with G2 AI, you can kind of start that canvas like, hey, I'm looking at note takers, or I'm looking at CRM software for my enterprise. And the G2 AI will obviously start the canvas, but then you as a human can edit it. You can share it. You can refresh it with the AI. And I think that would be a great way to kind of do what you're describing, where you're just kind of keeping notes on 3 apps. You're getting updates on them. You're editing it. You're adding your own notes. You're pulling in your colleagues. So you can all collaborate on this canvas, around apps or around your tech stack. And then you can use the AI to automatically refresh it. And I think that, I think for considered purchases of enterprise software, which oftentimes, like I said, require many people in a buying committee, like most business software apps, one person doesn't it's not like a
That's right.
control buy, right? Where you just kind of
Yeah.
decide, hey, I'm going to buy this shirt. It's more considered. You have to collaborate with colleagues on it.
Yeah.
And it might take several months. And during that time, especially in AI, we see it with like the LLM rankings, right? They change every week. And there's also cool sites now like LM Arena or the Scale AI leaderboards. And I think it's the same thing with AI software, right? Like it does tend to change week to week. And so I think you make a good point. Like, how do you then refresh it? But that's our vision with our G2 Canvas, where you can, create your own notes on products
That's right.
you're considering, share it with colleagues, and then automatically refresh it with AI. And I think, like I said, the Canvas concept we didn't have to invent. All the LLMs have it now, where you can collaboratively create documents, edit them, collaborate with the AI, and collaborate with other humans. And so that's a use case we're really excited about that we've already launched in G2 AI.
Do you remember those kind of early days of when kind of ChatGPT first came out, 3.5, and then it kind of shake the world? What were the kind of early concerns that you had, either about the business or generally about the AI that has never come to be that you were like, okay, we're not in that world. And then, are there any concerns that actually came true and now you're like, oh shit, something like that? You remember anything?
Um, well, I think the concern that has had an adverse impact on our business is, there's less click-throughs through Google.
Mhm.
And especially, I think a lot of that is, with the AI summaries now that Google
Yeah.
puts at the top of the page. And the reality is
Do you
most
also
buyers
hate it?
but I
Do
think
you hate it?
do I what?
Do you hate it as well? Do you hate this AI summary at the top?
Well, I don't know. I think it's useful. Most of the time it's useful. I think one thing I wish Google did, at least last time I looked at it, they don't make it easy to interact with it. Unlike ChatGPT, like to ask a follow-up prompt on the AI summary. And I think Google's doing that intentionally. My theory is they still want you to click on all the surrounding links.
Mhm.
They don't want you to just engage with the AI. But I think the concern that's valid there for us and for all websites, I think there's about 20% fewer clicks now
Yeah.
on Google search to
Yes.
any of the surrounding links,
Yes.
paid or free. So obviously that's also been an adverse impact for G2, where we're getting less clicks from Google, which was our number one and still is our number one source for new users. So I think that's the fear and concern that, we still have. And of course, on the flip side, my co-founders and I, the opportunity we saw was, wow, we can build, like what we were talking about earlier, we can build G2 AI, we can build buying agents, buying assistants. I think what was frustrating about G2 for ourselves, like we tried to build software recommenders, but they were never very good.
Mhm.
So you still had to just take people to the CRM category, you show them the rankings, and then yes, you could filter them. Hey, show me the rankings for SMB versus enterprise versus mid-market versus vertical. But it was sort of a clunky software discovery experience. And obviously now if you start an AI, like we were talking about, hey, just tell me the best AI note taker, tell me a little about yourself. I mean, you can have a much better shopping experience for software. And you no longer have to know which of the 2,000 categories to shop in. And our industry has been kind of wonkish. And like we all remember like account-based marketing, that's been categories have been created over the last decade, but it gets super confusing because now there's like account-based execution, account-based marketing, account-based selling, right? All of this, which is all, if you're like a marketing or sales software nerd, you sort
Yeah.
of love it. You love nerding out about it. But if you're just like, hey, I'm just a CMO,
Right.
especially I'm not in tech, like I'm just trying to grow my
Grow
business.
business.
I'm
Right.
just trying to improve my marketing. Like, why are you throwing all this category jargon at me? And I think that's the exciting opportunity now. If you're that CMO, you just go in and say that, right? Like, hey, I'm trying to improve my marketing effectiveness, my marketing ROI. How do I do that? And then you have a conversation. Obviously, it asks you, well, please sign up. What industry are you in? Oh, you sell B2B. Oh, it's a very considered purchase. You have to sell to a buying committee. Great. And then ultimately they might surface, oh, wow, did you know there's these account-based solutions now? Like 6 Sense demand-based that make it much easier to surround that buying committee and will make it much more efficient. But the category comes much later once you have the business problem, the business context that
That's right.
software buyer is trying to solve. And so I think that's what we're really excited about. I think it'll be just a much better shopping experience for software. And you no longer have to know the categories. You no longer have to scroll through top lists. You just get bespoke recommendations through an AI agent based on the same data we had in kind of a web format. So, so we're excited about the opportunities and still, aware of the threats. And we talked a lot earlier about GEO, and I think that's the other solution to SEO declining. And that's also been exciting for us. And now in our sales pitch, we have a kind of a side-by-side slide to be like, hey, we're number one in SEO, but that's declining. But more importantly, now we're also number one in GEO and LLM influence in all these software categories. And that's the future. And I think that's probably true with AI. Most companies, like there's some adverse impact. For us, it's SEO declining. But then there's an opportunity. Wow, look at the GEO influence we have. Look at the great agents we can create. And so I think as an entrepreneur, it's also, I tend to be more glass half full. But obviously, you also have to be aware of the glass half empty threats. And I think AI for G2 presents both. And I think for most people in our industry presents both.
Yeah. I mean, like, we're so aligned with you, seeing the same thing. Like the SEO traffic or like views have been growing, click-through rates have been down because of the AI assistant. My team really hates it. So like, why do you need this, like the entire page? Like you cannot find anything. All the good links are below, and then you
True.
cannot run ads now. So it also impacts that strategy, right?
Yeah.
Because your ads are not as visible. But then yeah, the LLMs are traffic are growing, so which is exciting, and I love that you mentioned that definitely the future would be some kind of partnership, citation, some other things. So it's not going to be as it is. But to shout out to Google, like you guys definitely need to move faster because you're going to lose a lot of good business from folks,
Mm,
right? And
true.
so
Now, as a
have you?
user, like if you compare it to Perplexity, like a pure AI search
Yeah.
experience, and I think, and Google, I understand it, right? They have, I don't know, what, $200 billion quote unquote
Yep.
legacy business, like best money printing engine ever invented, Google SEM ads.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand why they need to protect it, but you're right. It's sort of a weird hybrid now, right? Like a big AI summary that's not very interactive. And then you still have all the traditional links surrounding it, but it's kind of like, hey, which is it, right? Because
That's right.
it's not optimized for either. You don't get that
Yeah.
traditional search experience that maybe many people still like, and you also don't get the best of an AI conversation or an AI search. So, but obviously Google has a lot of smart people, so
Yeah.
who knows?
But
They'll
it's
probably
like
figure it out.
I think like the thing that they've done that I would probably don't do it is like they're trying to optimize both the back end and the front end, right? So when you're like optimizing the ranking and every marketers already are shaking, like, okay, our pages are not ranking as high. What is the keywords? How would they go? So they still wanted to figure that out first. But then they also introduced the front end with like AI assistant and summary, and then everyone's like, oh shit, so what's happening here? So then now they're like, everyone is like, okay, how do we optimize this? What do we do? And then actually my SEO lead, Eugene, who is like amazing talent. I was so happy to hire him back in the day. So now because of and thanks to him, we're killing it in the ranking space. But he said like, Michael, I'm probably gonna take like a vacation for a year or 2 years until this thing settle down because like there's so many changes in the 100 pages that I'll just literally like don't need to just kind of chill, go somewhere and go back, understand how it works, and then we're gonna figure this out. It's like, I know, Eugene, you cannot take the vacation. No, let's just kind of crack this, right? So
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Maybe we should connect them to Ross Briggs. He's our VP of buyer experience, and he also
yeah,
owns our SEO, now our GEO,
yeah.
and now, yeah, I think it's for traditional SEOs, it's kind of wild because now it's this whole world where they also have to, figure out the LLMs, and,
Yeah.
and it will take a while to settle. And they're all
Yeah.
experimenting, right? Every day it's different.
100%.
And do they add citations? Don't they add citations?
Yeah.
And then obviously as they train their models, as they
Yeah.
launch a new version of their model, the training sets are different. And so, yeah, it's kind of an exciting dynamic world. But I
Yeah.
think as an entrepreneur, I think for most entrepreneurs, it's kind of fun. Change is fun and it's scary. Like there's all this disruption and, oh,
Yeah.
wow, I might go out of business. On the flip side, it's like, oh, wow, look at all this cool stuff we can do with the AI.
Yeah,
So
but the budgets, like it's one thing like when we are experimenting, and another thing to deploy a budget on a paid ad or
true.
content, and you're like, do we deploy the same amount, or we optimize, or we change something? So we said, oh,
True.
let's wait out. And the worst thing is like when a lot of businesses are waiting out these days, like, oh, we don't know what's gonna happen. It's like
True.
uncertainty.
It kind
Let's
of
not do
freezes
that.
spend.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
we like,
and
I'm in marketing, I hate when people are freezing the spend. Like, but
true.
you still need to
And
build
it's
a business.
also
Like,
not clear yet what the paid models are with the LLMs.
right.
How
Yes.
are they going to
That's
embed
right.
ads? How are they going to have sponsored content? And
Yes.
somehow they will. And I think like people are like, oh, will AI disrupt ads? And then I've kind of thought about it. I'm like, nothing has ever disrupted ads.
Right.
You know what I mean? Obviously, ads have never disappeared. They always change format with new media, with new interfaces, right? But the concept of advertising, no tech revolution has killed it. It's just kind of reinvented it. And it'll be interesting to see how ads are reinvented and sponsored content is reinvented in this age of
Yeah,
LLMs.
challenge. That's a challenge, yeah. So, talking about like AI transformation, have you regrouped and rethought your kind of team structure, team hiring, like any kind of, especially on the leadership side to meet the new AI challenges? If yes, who you've been looking for, who did you bring on board, and generally, what is your now sort of like vision or sort of like position on the team structure now with the kind of AI in play and where the G2 is going to?
Yeah, and I think that what I'm most excited about in talent, we just acquired Y Combinator startup on Survey, and I might have mentioned that. They also became a new product squad,
Mm-hmm.
and their CEO Alex David is now our GM of our AI solutions squad. And I've also heard Parker Conrad talk about this, the founder and CEO of Rippling. And Rippling also, they do great on G2, because they ship good products. They have probably 10,000 reviews. And I think most people in the blogosphere and tech have heard, Parker's strategy is to build compound apps.
Mm-hmm.
And, he started with payroll as kind of a core HR app. And now they probably have 10 HR apps. Now they're doing finance apps, IT management apps. But the idea, compound startup, build, it's almost like an SAP for a small business, like build every app a business needs to run. And what's also interesting about Parker's talent strategy, he talks about, almost all his PMs are what he calls failed entrepreneurs. And I do think that can be a brilliant talent strategy right now, where you take, and it's like this unsurveyed team we just picked up, and frankly, they tend to be younger teams coming out of Y Combinator, maybe 20s, early 30s, that are truly AI first. And I'm an older entrepreneur, and I just turned 54. So I probably will never be AI first. Like I was, I remember I was a young entrepreneur, like when .com happened, and I was like a cloud first, .com first, but now I'm not AI first. So I do think that is a great way to pick up product talent now, is to acquire, acqui-hire, Y Combinator, other startups that are already building. And as we talked about, there is so much noise. So I think a lot of those AI first startups, they actually won't succeed commercially, because there's hundreds in every category that the
That's right.
VCs are funding.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the quote unquote failed teams are actually great teams. And they didn't really fail in terms of tech. They just failed. They couldn't build distribution fast enough to get enough revenue traction to get their next round. That's a talent strategy I'm really excited about right now. And if I were to pitch, if you're a quote unquote failed AI entrepreneur looking for a new home, like ping me, because I think that's a great way.
Yes.
And you also add a whole product squad, that's very nimble, very AI first. So that's a new talent strategy. And also my co-founder, Tim, he's he's leading product. We've gone into product mode, but he and I are both very excited to do more of that talent acquisition through, small acquisitions, acqui-hires of AI first startups and teams.
I would just add on this, like failed entrepreneur who at least made $1 million. So it's like, because like I spin off a couple of like brands and startups in the past couple of years, and about 70% of them kind of failed. And the reason it failed is that I sort of like branched them out with the people who has been doing something, but they hadn't tasted the real hustle when you kind of are generating revenue, and it kind of helps you to polish you as the entrepreneur in a way. So you start being good at the HR and recruitment and sales and the marketing and the finance, and you're great at time management, and you don't have the the other things that you don't. So you literally know how to deliver, how to deploy, how to get shit done, and you cannot do that if you never earn revenue, right?
Right.
And
No,
pay
I think
people.
Michael, you're saying you don't want them pre-revenue.
Right. Yeah.
And I agree, right? They've been grinding to generate some revenue, because until you have some revenue and people paying you, it's just
Yeah.
not real yet, right?
Yeah.
And I have a lot of empathy for failed entrepreneurs. I feel like I've almost failed many times in our ventures, and just kind of maybe gotten lucky and escaped. So I think there's no, yeah. But I also I agree with your point though. Like, you want the team to have actually done the hard work to actually start generating some revenue, because then you have kind of full empathy for what it really takes to build a
Yeah.
product and a
Yeah.
business, right? That actually
Yeah.
produces revenue
Exactly.
versus
Exactly.
just a science project if
Yeah.
you've never generated any revenue.
Yeah. And then again, like failing a company when you've been to a play to a you've generated revenue, right? Or you've had 50K MRR, 100K, then you failed. Something happened. That's fine, but
Right.
you have been there, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like being inspired or doing something or building something like a phantom startup and then never kind of deploying it. So what is your position about sort of like there are two ways of thinking about the talent strategy right now. Optimizing your junior talent and really focusing on bringing on the seniors and kind of just enhancing them with AI agent and like really being effective and like moving forward quickly, or sort of like deploying a junior strategy where you kind of are getting more junior talent, but then growing them and kind of enhancing them with AI. And in this way, they're kind of turning into kind of the senior talent. Because like, for example, for my business, right, we see that right now we literally cannot afford and cannot hire junior talent anymore just because of the high quality delivery of what we need to do for clients. So like you kind of make a mistake these days, like because the mistake costs you an account, a client. So you're literally looking for the best people at the budget that you can get, and then try to obviously optimize what they're looking for, but trying to go for senior, which I understand is not the best strategy because then I won't be able to nurture the pool of junior talent then to turn into the senior talent. And so I'm kind of limiting myself into my kind of capabilities. So obviously with your resources and with your brand, like everyone who wants to work for G2, you have a large team. So with this AI agentic future and your current talent strategy, are you leaning towards more the senior pool, the junior pool, the value to senior? Like, curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. And I think at our scale, and we're over 100 million revenue run rate, we use some of both. Like, I just hired a new CFO, Alex Bradley, and he obviously comes on the very experienced side. So I think kind of at the C-level, senior leadership level, I think you still need the experience. And as I mentioned on the other side, I would say, I'd say some experience. Like I said, I love the Y Combinator startup team on survey that we just picked up, right? And to me, they're probably in the sweet spot, where they all, let's say, more like 10 years experience trying to apply AI to a similar problem that we want to solve. That to me is probably the sweet spot. And I think the other trend now in industry, G2, we're also trying to keep up with. I think everyone's saying now the mantra is increase your revenue per employee.
Right. Yes.
Whereas in like 2020, 2021, it was all about raise and hire,
Mm-hmm.
because kind of capital was free. And in like 2021, the flex was like, oh, we grew from 500 to 1,000 people, Now the flex is like, we stayed at 500 people and we tripled our revenue.
Yeah.
And so I think we're trying to do more the latter.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, in senior roles, if you're managing a lot of people, I think you still need experience. And then I think we're also having some success. Like, we're still have a class of interns at G2 in our Chicago office this summer. We have a class of 15 interns. And I do think we still want to feed, and maybe it's also because we're around 550, 600 people globally. Like, obviously we have some scale, right? So we do also want to continuous every year still get a batch of new hires. And I do think what's amazing with college students, I see my sons, they just finished their sophomore year at the University of Colorado. They actually are much more AI first.
Right.
And I think also an interesting fact I read about ChatGPT, their usage actually drops in June. And you're like, what do you mean? Like, they're on such a long-term growth trend, but that's when college students are out of semester. And because college students use it so intensely,
Yeah.
and frankly, also somewhat nefariously, and somewhat upsets my boys. I think they're good students, but they're like, wow, all my classmates are cheating.
Yeah.
And even now, I think post ChatGPT, they try to do take home or like at home digital exams. And then there's like a camera watching you
Mhm.
and watching your laptop. But I think what they're doing now below the screen, they have their mobile phone. and they take a picture of the screen of like the test problem, prompt ChatGPT on their mobile below the camera to give them an answer. And so there's also all kinds of, but anyway, college students are figuring out how to use AI in every single way, and they're growing up with it. So I also think there's some advantage to some junior talent that, and I think they are AI first now. Anyone graduating from college, because they had it throughout college, right? They started college when ChatGPT 3.5 existed. So it's just a different way of working. So I think, a mix, you know what I mean? Like, I think senior talent used to want very experienced. Like I said, probably the best to me to building product is like the mid-level, like let's say 10 years post-college, some experience, ideally have built some AI first startup, have gotten to some revenue, as you pointed out. And then I think still adding, kind of a fresh batch of college grads. And maybe that's like a non-answer, but I do see in the age of AI, there's still value, kind of across those levels of seniority. And the one challenge though, probably for us and most companies, right, the reality is we're going to hire fewer junior engineers.
Yes.
Right. We're going to hire fewer junior BDRs. And to me, that is a valid concern for our industry, right? Like, what's the future pipeline? And I think most great CROs I know, even like Brian Millham, who just retired as the president of Salesforce, I've known him for a long time, but he was like the first BDR at Salesforce, like 26 years ago, and like, how are we going to create that next generation of leaders, whether it's in sales,
I think
or in
like
product.
the T-shape, to your point and your son's so I think you can cheat, that's fine. But if you're a generalist, if you're like a well-rounded person, so it's not about just the kind of the T-shape, right? So you can be good at all of the things and you can go dive deeper into one specific section. So let's say, yes, you're cheating on something, but as a generalist and the problem solver, you can be better. So I think like the future of the BDRs are like generalist BDRs, GTMs, someone that can both do the technology, the content, some design, do actual outreach, understand all the things. And instead of just saying, oh, I'm a junior sales exec, I know how to pick the phone and call and sell, right? Like now it's like selling is like, okay, yeah, it's one of the skills. Tell me 10, show me 10, right? So,
and freaking business entrepreneurship, like that's not cheating. You know what I mean? Like business, like the opposite. We're like, wow, that's a clever use of an AI. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And but I think you're right. I think, people can go more full stack more quickly, or maybe as a BDR, you even show a mock-up because they're like talking about the product. You're like, I don't quite like it.
Yeah.
Well, how about, for our next release, we make it look like this? You know what I mean? Like, so I think there's just so many exciting use cases. And I think you're right. We all become more full stack because it used to be like, it was hard enough to learn just was specific to the sales domain. But now that you can ask ChatGPT anything, you should go more full stack. And I think those are like the young people that are going to succeed because they have
100%.
more power. They're going to use AI full power, and they're going to be more creative.
Yeah.
And it's going to take them outside their domain much more quickly.
Yeah. So if you're not full stack, like why we're not doing, right? So it's like I'm talking to my BDRs, like, okay, did you did the clay? Did you do the personalization? Did you do this? Did you research? Did you outreach? Did you content? Can you do the social? Can you do design? Can you just create the banner? He's like, it's like a no-brainer. Like you have all of the tools available for you, right?
Yeah, don't wait for marketing, right? To create
exactly. Like
if
why
you
do
have
you
a
need
great
marketing?
idea, just do it,
Yeah, exactly. So let's get the juices. So that's why we're hopeful for the kind of the new generation.
Yeah.
Godard, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Fun conversation. Thanks for having me.
Guys, hope you enjoyed the interview. If you haven't liked, comment, or subscribed to Belkins podcast, I would appreciate if you do that. It's just gonna help me a lot to get even better guests and interview them on your behalf. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all in the next interview.